Here.
From the town of Southbury, we have First Selectman Manville.
Here.
We're joined in the room today by First Selectman Moan from Thomaston.
Here I am in the flesh.
From the city of Waterbury, Mayor O'Leary.
Here.
Is anyone here from the town of Watertown?
No, we gotta get them engaged.
From the town of Wolcott, Mayor Dunn is with us. I know he's with us.
I'm here.
And from the town of Woodbury, First Selectman Perkinson is
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you do have a quorum present. There is no MPO meeting today. It is just the COG meeting. And we're joined by speaker from the United Way, Jason Martinez. John Field will be with us from Dennis Region 5. David Murphy, who is representing CRCOG today, will be with us. I also have Sarah Radacey from Connecticut Department of Transportation on the call. Hetty Ayers from Eversource. I have Lou Mangini from Congresswoman DeLauro's office with us. And we also have Pauline Yoder, the Chief Operating Officer of Capital Region Council of Governments, who will be speaking later in the agenda. If there's anyone who I have not identified, can you please identify yourself at this time?
Ed St. John is here.
Gotcha,
April
sir.
Chaplin.
Yay.
Hey, April.
Hi.
This is Lillian McKenzie from Senator Chris Murphy's office.
Thank you, Lillian. I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Ellen Graham from Senator Blumenthal's office.
Thank you, Ellen. And did I miss Janine Lupo? Is she with us from Congresswoman Hayes? Okay, I'm sure she'll be joining us at some point. All right, Mr. Chairman, with that, you do have a quorum of the MPO of the Council of Governments, and it's your pleasure as to whether you wish to go to public comment or go right to the United Way presentation.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Anyone here from the public that wishes to address the COG?
Mr. Mayor, nobody from the public addressed us in advance to speak during the meeting. I know that we're joined today by Mike Mako from the Hearst Newspapers, Connecticut Post. He's on the call, but other than that, I don't, everyone else, all other members of the public are watching on our website or YouTube.
Okay. I just wanted to ask if anyone from the public wishes to address the COG. Hearing that, there is
Mayor
no.
O'Leary.
I'm sorry.
Good morning, it's Hetty Ayers with Eversource.
Hi, Hetty. How are you?
Good, can you see me?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. I'm having some computer issues. I just wanted to make two quick announcements. One, on behalf of the community relations team at Eversource, we just wanted to wish you all a very happy and healthy holiday season, and wanted to share the good news that Samantha had her baby on Monday, a very healthy boy named Remy John Robert Laban. So wanted to share that good news. So looking forward to working with you all in the new year.
Okay, Hetty, thank you so much. That is good news. Please send our regards to Samantha and her family.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. And Hetty, while I have you just for a second, maybe you and I could touch base sometime on Monday.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the public that wishes to address the board?
Mr. Chairman, I just know we've been joined by Mayor Merchant from Plymouth. And just for anyone who's on the phone who may be muted, if you need to unmute, *6.
Okay. So next we have Mr. Jason Martinez of the United Way Greater Waterbury that's going to be providing us with a presentation. Jason, go right ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Martinez. I am Vice President of Community Impact at United Way Greater Waterbury. Today's presentation on Alice is a Connecticut United Way presentation. Our Alice report, those may be aware, the updated 2020 report was released right after Labor Day this past September. It compiles some information from 2018 into this updated 2020 report. And in addition to that, it also does provide some information related to COVID-19 and the pandemic and how that has affected our ALICE population. So next slide, please. Thank you. So for those who may not know, ALICE is an acronym. It wasn't created by me or even the Connecticut United Ways. It actually was created by two United Ways in Florida and in New Jersey, who came together years ago to really give a name to a new group of folks that we saw struggling in our communities across the country. And so ALICE is a term that United Ways coined that we use across the entire country. It stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. It really is what I think many times we used to call the working poor. It is groups of folks who are working and working extremely hard, many times more than one job, and are still struggling to make ends meet, at the end of each week or at the end of each month or even the year. And so next slide, please. The folks who are ALICE are living below a threshold, and we'll go into at a later slide kind of what that threshold is, what that cost of living is. But in Connecticut, there are 27% of households across the entire state who qualify as ALICE, and that 27% is different than those who are at the federal poverty level. That's another 11%, so a total of 38%. But this ALICE group really are the folks who many times don't qualify for some of the benefits that those at the federal poverty level do qualify for. So if you think of things like SNAP as a key example, many of our ALICE families, they're working and they're making just too much money to be able to qualify for some of these government subsidies, but are still struggling, each day to make ends meet. And so when we look at the state as a whole, there is that 38% of folks who are struggling, and 27 are working people who are struggling. And we all know ALICE. And so, in this slide, just a couple of different types of employment areas that ALICE usually or many times fall into. I think with COVID-19, it's safe to say that a lot of the essential care workers who are caring for folks, COVID patients in the hospital, or those who are caring for our family members, maybe our elderly family members. I think of my mother and her visiting nurse and her home health care aide, many times fall into this ALICE population. Right? If you look at lots of our office clerks, our administrative staff, teaching assistants who through COVID are really working hard to support the remote learning in different after school or in-school programs, all fall into ALICE. So, these are the people who we are dependent upon, day in and day out to really keep our towns and cities functioning. Next slide, please. And so this is just an example that ALICE is everywhere. And I think, for this presentation, I'll do my best to kind of keep it statewide. But I did provide a one-pager. Actually, there's 5 different one-pagers out of the 19 towns that I believe are in this group's catchment area. There are 5 different United Ways that oversee the total of all those towns. And so I provided one-pagers from each of those 5 United Ways that will break down the ALICE population for every single town that has representation at this table. So hopefully those will get sent out after this presentation if they haven't been sent out already. But of course, you could always go CT ALICE Saves, on the website. The United Way of Connecticut website has a whole section on ALICE. The whole full report, it's a doozy, but well worth the read if you have the time. But today we'll just do some highlights. But the goal of this slide,
Jason, we'll send those attachments out following today's meeting.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. ALICE is everywhere. And I think many times there's this thought of, there are certain towns in the community, that are kind of our picture perfect suburbs many times. And a lot of times our urban centers kind of get stereotyped as, that's where the need is. But actually, there are ALICE folks all across the state. in every town that you all represent, whether it's a beautiful shoreline community or wonderful suburb, there are people who are certainly in need who can't make ends meet. And what does it mean, to not be able to make ends meet? What are the expenses that folks are trying to handle? And so this slide is a list of some of those. So this is where Alice is, and many of us are spending our money, and this is where folks are struggling. Housing can be quite expensive. There are so many families, specifically Alice families, who are spending 30, 40, up to 50% of their monthly income on rent or mortgage. Childcare is a huge, huge expense. For those of you who may have children or may have had children who, went through childcare facilities, how expensive. I have two kids who, thank goodness, are now kind of both in the school system and not needing kind of the early care. And I remember when my youngest finally was going into kindergarten, I felt like I had hit the lottery because it was such a huge expense for that early care. In fact, in Connecticut, for really high quality early child care, it'll actually cost a family member more money each year to send their kid to that high quality early care center than it would to send them for a year to UConn. So it's such an expensive piece. Food, of course, right? We all do need to live. I think, it's important to note that, you can see here on the slide, this is, these amounts aren't, with expecting folks to be going out to eat and spending, all this money on food. This is really like the bare minimum, not even going out to some of our favorite chain restaurants, and I'm not knocking any chain restaurants and, of course, pre-COVID, but, this is really being at home and the bare necessities of the food that you're spending. Transportation, healthcare, is also a key one. And then, you can see the remaining, I'll highlight technology, which is a newer expense that was added to the survival budget at the last report. The thought is everyone has kind of a smartphone. It's almost expected now that folks will have this. And so it's now added on. And so I've got the Greater Waterbury. This is, what I'm most familiar with. But again, you will all have these one pagers. So this is what the survival budget might look like in the Greater Waterbury community. What does it cost to live? So you can see for a single adult, it can cost almost up to $30,000 to be able to meet all of these basic needs of housing, childcare, food. And for a family, that might have two children who are in the early care system, they need to make almost $90,000 in this community just to survive. This really isn't even thriving, and you can see the hourly wage, what that kind of boils down to for a single person. Maybe it's somewhere between $13, $14 an hour. For a family, they need to bring in somewhere around $45 an hour. And what makes this even more difficult is that, more than half of the jobs across our state don't even pay $20 an hour. So two working parents may not even be able to get to that $45 an hour, with okay paying jobs at $20 an hour. And they're still going to fall short of being able to meet this survival budget. Next slide, please. And so, I think there's a lot of information in that 2020 Alice report, and a lot of learnings. I really do advise anyone who's really interested to read up on the report. But what we're seeing is more families are continuing to struggle. We're seeing the Alice threshold increase, and we're seeing the Alice population simultaneously also increase. Based on the data, Black and Hispanic households have a disproportionately high percentage of families below the Alice threshold. The same is true for our seniors. Almost half of our seniors also fall into Alice across the state of Connecticut. Childcare is one of the largest issues for Alice. We recently, the Connecticut United Ways held a town hall We had Commissioner Bai present there, and we discussed the idea of child care deserts, the idea that nearly half of folks across our state don't live or work within a reasonable radius to a child care provider and have difficulty accessing adequate child care. And again, there's inequality in income and wealth that will continue to rise as our wage growth and job stability in high wage jobs outpace the growth and stability of the low wage jobs. So, we're seeing, our low wage jobs, that's what's become available. A lot of our retail positions, even since the recession 2008, 2009, we can say, pre-COVID, of course, almost all of the jobs had returned to the state, but not the same types of jobs that were there pre-recession. The jobs that came back were the lower wage earning jobs, specifically around retail and those types of positions. So there is and has been a response through the Connecticut United Ways, specifically now with COVID and understanding how do we support our ALICE families. And so what we've done across the state is we've actually provided dollars in hand to our ALICE folks. And so across the entire state, we've supported. This slide is a bit old. It's more than $600,000 and more than 3,000 households now. But folks in our ALICE population were able to be provided with $200 gift cards, kind of mobile gift cards that they could use really anywhere. And it was kind of technology based with a smartphone. Of course, if they didn't have a smartphone, we were able to get them kind of physical cards that they could use. And we've been able to just track what those cards have mainly been used. And, it's unfortunate, but, not surprising to see that almost 80% of these dollars have been spent on basic needs, food, utilities, a lot of pharmacy expenses for medications and things like that. And so that's really where the need is. But that's just one way through COVID. We've worked on supporting our ALICE families. And we're actually planning right now, the Connecticut United Ways, the potential for another round of these electronic gift cards to be able to be issued in the winter, in the new year. If you haven't heard about this, I would connect with your local United Way in your region, and they can give you more information about the model that they're doing in their catchment area. All right, so I know I didn't have a lot of time, so I wanted to just kind of highlight a couple of pieces, but also offer if there are any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them now, or those that, I maybe am unable to answer, I will certainly get that information back to you.
Okay, Jason, thank you so much for that presentation. It's really amazing to me.
We're unmuting.
Anybody out there have any questions for Jason?
I just have a comment saying thank you. Thank you for the, to see that, sometimes I know we do a lot in each of our towns and we all help out, but it's amazing to actually see that and that, you're out there helping. So thank you for what you do.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Dunn. Anyone else have any questions or any comments for Jason? Sounds like they're letting you off easy, Jason, but that was because your presentation was so thorough and we deeply appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, good people. Next item, agenda 2A, approval of the minutes of the November 13th, 2020 NVCOG CNVMPO meeting. I need a motion.
Make motion approved.
Accepted. Move to accept as presented. Ed Moan.
We have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any discussion?
Follow-up photos should be taken.
Oh,
Excuse, I'm 72 hours after.
go ahead.
We have Mr. Mayor, if I might, we have a motion by First Selectman Moan. We have a second by Mayor Dunn.
I'm aware of that.
For the record.
Hi, thank you. I'm aware of that. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Ed Moan.
We should encourage them to do so.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item agenda 2B is in boy, approval of the agency financial reports and summaries for the period ending October 31st, 2020. Michael?
Thank you. So this is the report ending October 31st, 2020. We're 33% through the year with a net position of 123,000.
Makes it easier.
Which we anticipate to slowly decrease as the year progresses. There's been no major changes in budget revenue sources and no significant overages and expenses. I do want to note, because the executive meeting was canceled last time and rescheduled after this meeting, we didn't have the opportunity to discuss a number of items such as the audit RFP, but we will be presenting that at the January meeting along with the audit results and preliminary budget.
Okay, great.
Any questions?
I'm sorry?
Any questions?
Okay, I'll get to that. Mayor Dunn, do we have a motion?
Move to accept the financial report. Ed Moan.
Okay, Ed Moan. Mayor Dunn, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Item agenda 2C, Director's Report. Rick Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm going to speed through a couple of these because we're actually going to take up the first two items during the executive board meeting, which is now scheduled to follow this meeting, following the adjournment. I will say on the COVID recovery, we'll go through it in detail in the executive board meeting. But as many of you have heard, there's been a delay, a glitch in the Federal Economic Development Administration approval of our statewide application to fund COVID recovery activities going forward for the next 2 years. I'm now part of a committee working with the state, along with my colleague Lyle Ray at Capital Region Council of Governments, and we hope to have this resolved and not be an issue within a matter of weeks, we hope. In terms of the board vacancies, we're going to be discussing that at the board meeting, at the executive board meeting. We'll go through that, and next month in January, we'll vote hopefully to fill the vacancies. The last thing I want to tell you about before we go to John DeCarlo is I just got emailed just as we were sitting down here today. The county equivalency proposal from the Federal Commerce Department is going to be published in the Federal Register on Monday. I will be receiving an FAQ sheet that's been updated. I'll get it this afternoon and I'll forward it on to all of you. We wanted to make sure that all of the chief elected officials were aware of this and aware of the bullet points on it, particularly because we expect the governor to do a press release on this either late today or early on Monday. So we wanted to give you a heads up. If there are any questions on any of those, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we'll switch to John.
I would like you to tell the entire board what the vacancies are, please.
Sure. So we have two vacancies right now. One is a vacancy on the executive board, which was created when Kurt Miller resigned from his position in Seymour. So it is, according to the bylaws, it is the chairman's selection to fill the vacancy on the executive board. However, the mayor has asked that I place it on the executive agenda, and there will be discussion about that today, and then hopefully we'll have a recommendation and vote on it next month. The other vacancy is, so we, as most of you are aware, we're the fiduciary for a revolving loan fund with EPA, and the NVCOG board must function as the revolving loan committee. So there's a committee of 5 members, and First Selectman Miller was, or former First Selectman Miller was also a member of that. So it's up to the board generally to fill the vacancy, or they can delegate that to the chairman.
So everyone out there listening, if you have a desire to fill in on either one of these vacancies, I need you to email Rick so that we know that you're interested. And obviously there's only one on the executive board and one on the other that Rick just explained. So if you're interested, let us know. I hope that we choose Kurt Miller's replacement wisely, but I wanted everyone to have an opportunity to weigh in if they were interested. Okay. All right. You all done work?
I just want to switch to John DiCarlo briefly under my report so he can talk about an issue that's been raised recently.
Okay. John, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Rick, and good morning, everyone. Earlier this year, MIRA, which stands for Materials Innovation Recycling Authority, sent us a list of 15 NVCOG towns that have their solid waste processed at its incinerator plant in Hartford. A number of these towns don't have a contract with MIRA per se, but still have their materials processed there. MIRA's president and CEO, Tom Kirk, has spoken before this board multiple times in recent years. Last week, he announced that following the unsuccessful negotiations with the state earlier this year, that plant is going to close its operations by July 2022. We've heard from a number of towns on this and bring it before you today. There is no, if there is no state option for processing or incinerating municipal solid waste, that's going to have a significant impact on our members. So we bring it before your attention today. There's no action to take today, but it could be an issue for future discussion and possible action.
Yes, and I think we're all very much aware of what's going on with MIRA, and I got to tell you, this has the potential to bring a huge financial hardship to all the cities and towns who participate with MIRA, and you know, it's just unbelievable that they've gotten to this place that they're in right now. Sadly, it's just amazing to me. But regardless, I won't go any further with that at the moment. But I would brace yourselves for those of you that use MIRA services, because there's going to be a lot of work that's involved here and a lot of expense. So thank you.
Mayor, if I may comment.
Sure.
I'm on the, I've taken part in the Connecticut, I don't know, waste management piece that CCM is putting together, and I've voiced my concerns there in a number of areas, specifically this area. What is being proposed by the state really just nibbles around the edges as how we can reduce waste. And I'm not saying those are not necessarily bad ideas. In fact, many of them are very good ideas. I take exception to some as well. But for us to move away from incineration and generation of electricity, and at this point in time, landfill, which is taking place perhaps in, I don't know, Pennsylvania or Ohio, is truly a step backwards for the state of Connecticut and all of us as municipalities. We won't even talk about the financial impact, which is, as you illuminated, is enormous. I think we need to continue to put pressure on the state to recognize that it would be a major step backward, and that it is not in the best interest of certainly us as municipalities or the state as large to go in that direction.
Well, we appreciate it, and we really appreciate the update. I know I'm very concerned as well as you are. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I might, so one of the reasons I had John raise this again today is we've been asked by several chief elected officials to investigate and update. We've attempted to put together a committee of municipal appointees who work under the CEOs. So we took it to the TTAC, our Technical Advisory Committee, which is primarily your town public works engineers and sometimes planners. There wasn't a board that really had an appetite to take up the discussion. I know Jim Stewart from Naugatuck was very interested in having it discussed. There wasn't a lot of appetite there. Would it be practical to get a working group of municipal staff, or would you prefer just to deal with this at the board level?
Look, I'm open to anything. You know, we don't use MIRA for a bunch of reasons here in Waterbury, but I would think that those of you that do, and if you'd like to be more involved and have some feedback and follow up, I would suggest that we do start a little subcommittee, and maybe Edmond would be generous enough to chair it.
And as you know, Mayor, I'd be more than willing to jump in. I'm certainly not afraid to be vocal.
Okay. So anyone who would like to do that, please get a hold of through Rick and the office. We'll put together a committee and we'll see where we go. Okay.
All right.
Ed St. John here, Mayor. I'd be very willing to serve with Ed Moan on that.
Okay. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Ed.
I go way back with CRA and Mirror and all kinds of things. And the bottom line here to all of our members is, and Ed Moan has already made a comment regarding resource recovery. And it's hard to believe that this great state once led the nation in resource recovery. And now we're falling to the bottom of the list and going back to landfills that we closed every single one in Connecticut because of environmental issues. And now we're sending it to states. I wonder how long the states are going to keep taking this. There's no capacity in our other plants to take the 700 tons a day that goes through the Mirror project. And there's just no capacity. So it's all got to be landfilled. Good luck at what that's going to cost us through and the other plants, their prices and costs for tip fees are going through the roof. We know this. It's inevitable. But anyway, I'd be very willing to serve with you, Ed, on it and bring some history to it. Very interested in this.
Thank you, Ed.
Mr. Chairman, what we'll do is we'll have John reach out to the CEOs in the 15 towns who are involved with Mira. I know we got interest from Mercosetti as well, so we'll reach out and see if we can get together a working committee on this.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item agenda 3, regional and municipal shared services update. John, you've got the floor again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last month, I participated in a Council of Small Towns cost technology webinar that featured a presentation from the Capital Region Council of Governments on the IT programming that they offer towns. As multiple NVCOG towns and NVCOG itself have had either your websites or servers hacked in the past several years, I thought that CROG's cybersecurity program might be of benefit. The programming doesn't present any challenges to working with your internal municipal IT staff or vendor, but it really works to supplement what they do to protect your servers and data with some cost-effective pricing. And as Rick has mentioned, Pauline Yoder, COO of Capital Region Council of Governments, is on the line with us, and she'll detail CROG's cybersecurity programming and briefly touch upon a couple of other CROG IT-related services as well. On to you, Pauline.
Thank you, John. Thank you this morning for having me. So you can go to the next slide. I'm going to go through this very quickly. The CROG IT Services Cooperative is a cooperative made up of the Capital Region Purchasing Council, of which many of the NVCOG members are already members, COST, and other fee-for-service members. So it's basically open to any Connecticut municipality. We competitively bid all of our contracts. And it's to offer the towns as much flexibility and efficiency and cost savings as they can access. You can go to the next slide. So with the cybersecurity services, the purpose of the cybersecurity services is to enhance and augment what you currently have. With anything cybersecurity related, it's a balance between what your costs are versus what the risks are. If I were to say, for $1 million, I can protect you for 6 months with 100% guaranteed. It's probably doable for $1 million, but not worth it. You have to, with cybersecurity, you have to balance out what are your costs going to be and what are the risks are if you don't expend those costs. And that is a decision at the municipal and at your level, frankly. In terms of the recommendations, the vendor that we have does mutual recommendations. So they don't have a particular vendor that they prefer or services that they push. They also, if it's going to save you money to do one thing, over another, that's what they would recommend. They have the best interest of the municipality in mind, and that's one of the reasons why they were chosen as the vendor. Keep going. So the cybersecurity services divides up into several areas. System assessments this is a overview of what you have. So what kind of data do you have? Where do you keep it? What kind of applications do you have? Are they secure? Where are they secure? Where are the gaps in that? What policies do you have? Do you have gaps in your policies? And with that assessment comes with a plan of action. So here are things that you should be doing, and here are things that you could be probably should be doing, and here are things that you might want to think about doing. Is probably the best division of that, along with cost projections on implementing those. So you can make that decision of, do I want to take this risk, or do I want to cover this area of need? Backup and disaster recovery, that's fairly straightforward in terms of if you do get hacked and have ransomware, what do? You want to be able to, the ideal is to say, okay, just let's go back to the cleanest. Oftentimes people will go back to their cleanest copy. The risk with that is that sometimes those ransomwares will sit on your servers for quite a while before they're released. And so it's not completely foolproof, right? Network monitoring, and this is a service where it's straightforward in terms of the explanation. It looks at your firewalls and your system reports. It looks for unusual activity, data loss, and mitigation, data loss detection. So if something is suddenly something, huge amounts of data is being moved from your servers or elsewhere, it will monitor that and flag those things for you. Training, this is staff training. So one of the things that we've discovered is that your staff, human error is one of the biggest areas where a biggest area of weaknesses in this area. And I mean, the best example that I've had is there was a superintendent who got an email from what looked like the payroll provider saying, I need the social security numbers of all your employees. And that superintendent emailed it back to them. And guess what? It was not the provider that he thought it was. And so now that was a big breach, but that was all human error, and it's all social engineering. So training is essential. And so the training modules there's testing, so phishing tests. So you get an email. All of you are familiar with the phishing emails, and they get more and more sophisticated, so that it looks like we've done this training, and it looks like it's coming from our executive director. It looks very much like it's coming from the executive director, and very much like something that he would say or request. So that training takes place, and also the awareness. There's also modules that you can require employees to go through, video tutorials along with tests, so that they have to complete it successfully in order, and they really teach you about the different options, the different ways that hackers now try to get to you. And one of the ways is through your phone, spam phishing through on text messages, and that's a new area that can be dangerous. Remediation, straightforward. That's you have these, you do the system assessment, and there's these recommendation areas, right? Of you have a gap here, or it would probably be beneficial to implement X, Y, and Z. Or this server is exposed in this area, or there's the various recommendations. So that's the remediation of helping you get to full health with regards to that. And finally, in terms of the services, there's also virtual information security officer, which is your on-call cybersecurity expert. So if you have an actual emergency, this is the person you call. Say, what do I do? What's the next step? Hopefully, you will have the policies in place and those response items in place so that you know what needs to be done. And the VCISO would also offer you non-emergency sort of preparedness consulting of continually looking at the systems, new additions, and helping you to maintain your sort of cybersecurity health. With regards to that, I believe we sent out handouts with regards to the pricing of the different modules. They're based on population of the individual towns. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to contact me. The other thing that we have, and the cybersecurity is cybersecurity model policies, and these are available to any Connecticut town. We develop these using the regional services grant that all the COGs get, but we're offering it to any town that wants to access it. You can just email me. So they're model policies on what municipalities should have in place with regards to their cybersecurity policies, with regards to data classification, security, overall security, access. There's a typo there. It's not guest access, it's guest access. Breach protocol, what happens when you do have a breach. And I say when you do have a breach because everyone has had a breach of some sort or another. Even if you haven't, you will. I hate to say that, but that is definitive. It's the matter of mitigating that to make sure that it's not, that the damage is limited. And then staff policies. How do you your website policy, your staff training, and acceptable use of computers, et cetera. So that's sort of our cybersecurity module or cybersecurity services, the suite of services that we have available to towns. As I said, they're available to all the towns. I'm going to briefly touch upon some other areas as well. We do also have electronic document management system, and this is it is a shared system where we have the back end is shared by the towns, the participating towns, and it's electronic document management. Does that mean that my time's up?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. So that's actually
electronic,
I believe,
document management on the agenda. So we're on a schedule here this morning.
That's fine.
We're very appreciative of,
no problem at all. I'm happy to take any questions that people might have.
Any questions for Pauline, folks?
If I may, Pauline, if you could simply distribute some of those policies, draft policies or sample policies, if you would, to get it to John DiCarlo, and he could get to the member municipalities.
Yep.
That might be helpful.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pauline. Johnny, we're going to talk about the household hazardous waste program.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I'll spend all of 20 seconds mentioning something I think that was valuable in what CROG is offering, is that one of the services they do as part of the cybersecurity is they will attempt to break into your town. And that in itself could be valuable because you'll find out how vulnerable you are. And moving on to household hazardous waste, there's a memo in your packet. The Household Hazardous Waste Committee has recommended a change to the attendance policy. For background, each town sends a staff member to every household hazardous waste collection event. 15 of our towns participate in this program. The person helps staff the line, but they also are there to make a financial decision on behalf of the town or city if a resident brings in anything extraordinary in terms of volume or disposal cost. During the meeting that the Household Hazardous Waste Committee had last month, the following attendance protocol was proposed and unanimously voted approved by the members. Each town has to send a municipal representative who can be primarily standing outside for a 6.5-hour shift and be empowered to make financial decisions on behalf of the municipality, as I mentioned earlier. If a town doesn't send a representative, the NVCOG staff in charge of the event is responsible for making any financial decision in that regard for that municipality. Also, a small financial impact, but the population-based administrative fee, which is currently $15,000 split among the towns on a population-based formula, automatically would double for any towns for a following fiscal year if a town fails to send a representative to 2 consecutive collections. Every municipal CEO would be sent attendance sheets for this and receive 2 warnings before any of that, albeit minor, but financial penalty is incurred. The motion before you would be to approve the attendance protocol unanimously approved by the Household Hazardous Waste Committee last month.
Motion to approve. Jeff Manville.
I'll second it. I don't know if we're one of the towns not following it, but I'll second it.
So, Mayor, discussion?
Sir, you're muted.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Edmond, discussion, please.
Thank you. John, quick question here. So are we talking about a representative from the town in which is hosting the event, or all events must have a representative from the towns?
Thank you, Ed. It is all events have to have a representative at these events to make, primarily to make that financial decision. This program has been in operation for decades and it's run extremely smoothly. It's just recently we've had a couple of towns that haven't exactly sent people, and the other towns on the Household Hazardous Waste Committee have raised this, that there needs to be a change to the attendance policy. It is really only a couple of towns that run into issues who I will speak to offline. But in general, this is not any kind of major problem happening long-term, and it's for every event, not just the host town.
Okay. In the past, hasn't it been whoever hosted it needed to have staff there?
The host town generally has more members there. It'll usually be like maybe 2 or 3 people just to coordinate use of the facility. But there really only needs to be one person there as a town representative, even at a host town's event. It's just that the person will be there to coordinate anything that has to happen in the school per se, or whatever building we're using to make sure they want extra people on hand. But you don't need, even if you're hosting, more than 2 or 3 people there max to coordinate things.
Okay, very good.
Other questions? We have a motion on the floor. Everybody ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Edmond, nay. I think it may impose a hardship on some towns to have to send somebody to every event, and sometimes it's at great distances and in an overtime situation. I wasn't present at the committee meeting, so I really don't know the details, but I have some concern in that regard.
Okay, point well taken. So we have one opposed. Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Onward. Item agenda 4, emergency management update. John Field, coordinator for Region 5, and Joanna Rogowski.
Hi, thank you for this time. Again, I just want to pass the baton over to John Field. He's Region 5 Regional Recovery Coordinator. He's going to talk a little bit about the long-term recovery. I can chime in if he needs. And there's, as you can imagine, a lot of emergency management details to go. John, over to you.
Thank you, Joanna. Good afternoon, Mayor and the rest of the group. Thank you for allowing us the time to give a little update here. As you can imagine, there is a ton of stuff going on right now in regards to COVID. We're still right in the middle of that. I think we're in operational period 200 and something. The governor continues to have weekly meetings and updates. The governor himself does a municipal conference call every other week, which many of you are aware of. And now what they've done on the off weeks, if they added at that same time on Wednesday evenings at 5 o'clock, a call with municipal and local public health officials regarding a webinar, which includes some training and some enforcement recommendations and stuff like that. So some of you may have had the opportunity to participate in last week's event. So next week we'll have a governor's municipal conference call. Following week will be another webinar put on by Connecticut DPH. We continue to try to enhance the testing. There is a initiative to make sure there's sufficient and adequate testing throughout the entire state. Region 5 specifically, I think when I looked at the last data, we were talking over 40 plus testing sites throughout the region. And that doesn't really include the pop-up sites that they do on a daily basis. We continue to look at the, well, I consider it the Route 7 corridor because there seemed to be some lack of testing up in the Kent, New Milford area. So we'll continue to work with the governor's office and DPH on doing that. One of the big things that's come up is first responder testing. I'll be honest with you that every testing firm we've talked to, as long as they're aware that it's a first responder and they're looking for some priority testing, they're very open to entertaining testing for our first responders. I'll be very specific that Hartford Healthcare and Waterbury Hospital have been more than inviting for first responder testing. So there is adequate there. Next week, we will be performing a point of distribution for PPE. Again, next Friday, the 18th, is Region 5's. This will be for our healthcare folks and our EMS responders. They have already received notification of this pod operation and to come pick up their stuff that's available to them. This will be PPE for the most part. We continue to work with the food insecurities and we're working with, actually we're in phase 4 of Farms to Family right now. And that is, we're working with nonprofits based on the restrictions that were put on us. We couldn't run that operation, so we had to identify the 3 nonprofits, and that would be New Opportunities of Waterbury and Torrington. I think Waterbury PAL was another, and then Danbury Food Consortium was another. So those 3 organizations continue to work with the Farms to Family, collecting boxes and distributing boxes to our pantries to assure we're meeting the needs, trying to meet the needs of food insecurity. The one problem with that will end next week. So it was supposed to go to the end of the month, but they've met their obligation. The vendor has met their obligation in regards to delivery of the food and the trucks. So we're trying to work through that and see if there's other mechanisms for meeting some of the food insecurities, especially the week before Christmas and the holidays. So I'm trying to work with some of the nonprofits to see if there's other programs available. Salvation Army also is working on food insecurity. They're doing, there's a combination of, they're supplying, I think they have 18,000 boxes coming in throughout this month here. And they are working with the community resource coordinators who are working with the contact tracers to make sure that people that are in isolation or quarantine are given boxes of food. At the same time, they're giving out food at testing sites for people who have been tested and have to go into quarantine and isolation. They give out boxes there. And then at the same time, if there's people that are unable to leave their homes due to COVID or other reasons, they do what's called a DoorDash, and they will actually deliver right to the door. So Salvation Army, that's a separate program from the Farms to Family. They continue to work that through. We're still waiting on the presidential declaration for ICAs. So again, we're just waiting for the president to sign that. And then, since our last meeting, I think we continue to try to interpret the executive orders that have come out over the last month. I think there's 7 or 8 since we met last. Some of them, some important things, there's some increase in weekly benefits for lost wages. So there's some assistance there. There was some There was an executive order in regards to hiring short-term substitute teachers in an attempt to help the education folks meet their staff needs. They were running into some problems there. They've also extended, I believe, out to February 2021, all the executive orders. And then finally, the last executive order that came out dealt with vaccines and, assuring that our pharmacists and, talked about vaccines for minors and all sorts of stuff. So there's been a lot of executive orders. We continue to work on that and try to inquire or meet everybody's inquiries in regards to questions on those executive orders. The last thing I'll talk about, then I'll turn it over to Joanna to talk about long-term recovery itself. But the last thing is vaccines. Next week, as you may have heard, next week we're anticipating the first arrival of, I think it's approximately 30,000 vaccines in the state. I think they're looking at Tuesday possibly. We'll get this. That 30,000+ doses will be going to hospitals as well as CVS and Walgreens. There's a federal agreement with CVS and Walgreens that they will vaccinate long-term care facility staff and residents. So they'll be working directly with the federal government on getting that vaccine as well as, they're working directly for the federal government and working directly with the long-term care facilities, but they obviously tap into the amount of doses we get at the state level. Also, the hospitals will be getting dosage. So the hospitals will be doing their staff and those healthcare workers that they can, as many as they possibly can. And then also they've broken it down into 3 categories. I think if you go on the DPH website, there's a category 1A, 1B, and then a 2. Our EMS folks, our EMS first responders are part of 1A. So they'll be, as soon as it's available, they will start to get vaccinations rolling out to them. The hospitals will be doing that administration. So again, things are changing on a pretty regular basis as far as vaccinations are concerned, but our first doses from Pfizer are due for delivery Monday or Tuesday of next week, so the week of the 14th. And I think we've talked about this before. This brings up a large amount of logistical support, regarding freezers and all that kind of stuff, because these things have to be kept in a freezer environment. And I think we talked about last time, -70 to -90 degrees below, minus Fahrenheit. So that's a pretty cold temperature. But our acute hospitals, there's 10 acute hospitals in the state of Connecticut that have capacity to maintain and store these vaccines. So they've been identified already. So they'll be working with them to try to make sure the distribution goes smoothly. So as of yesterday, it was approved by FDA, I think, or it's going through some final process there. And then it'll kick into what's called Operation Warp, where the military will actually get they're required to get the entire amount of doses out to all the states within 4 days. So, there's a lot of moving parts that are going on right now. So I think that's all I have except for long-term recovery. And I think I'll let Joanna talk about that. Again, Joanna's been very instrumental in helping us and coordinating for us the long-term recovery and what's going on with that. So big kudos to Joanna and the group for taking care of that. So Joanna?
Hey, thanks, John. And thank you for your kind words. And this is not just me, this is also Northwest Hills and WestCOG that are helping out. So I just want to briefly touch on the long-term recovery. The last time that the Regional Recovery Steering Committee met was this past Wednesday. Very great discussion. Number one, unmet needs form that's going to be rolled out statewide. There was a pilot study done in Region 5. We've done with the pilot study, and state will soon be rolling it out to the whole statewide. for statewide use, and that's mainly for communication between local and regional and state. If there is an unmet need at the local level, I want to reiterate, please contact someone at the COG. We'll get it into the system so that hopefully we can get something going at the regional level to address it. And if not there, then we'll start working at the state level. I just want to echo what the United Way representative said. One of the major needs is childcare. That was a major need from the Health and Human Services group from that meeting. I'm just going to touch real quickly on Regional Emergency Planning Team. The memorandums of agreement are due for a few in Region 5. I've already contacted you. If you have any questions, please contact me. And regarding the community emergency response teams, there's been new guidance issued about doing basic training virtually, but also this was another thing that was touched on. As these vaccine locations get opened up to the public, the CERT volunteers would be a great opportunity for them to direct traffic. So consider that with your CERT teams and get in touch with John Field to get that activation going. And that's all I've got on the emergency management front.
So Mayor, if I may, the one thing I want to say though is I cannot stress enough. I've been receiving some calls in regards to our first responders and their possible exposures and some guidance and being exposed at car accidents or other responses. I cannot stress enough to all the mayors and the first selectmen the message that we need to reassure that our first responders are taking the proper precautions and measures to protect themselves during a COVID environment. Because I know it's tough. Being a former first responder myself, I understand that it does provide some limitations to some of our operations, but I will tell you, I cannot stress enough. I've received multiple calls over the last couple of weeks in regards to, hey, I need some guidance because I think I had some people exposed, and we cannot lose our staff. We can't lose our staff. So we just need to, make sure that our people are taking the proper precautions at all times during this COVID environment. But that's all I have, Mayor, unless there's any questions, and happy holidays to everyone. So.
Hey, John, can I ask a question?
Okay, Jen, thank you. Questions, folks? Anybody have any questions? So thank you, Jen and Joanna. John, one thing that you should keep in the back of your mind, we have a 2,000, brand new 2,000 square foot freezer. It doesn't meet the temperature guideline for the Pfizer vaccine, but it does for Moderna. I know the hospitals are equipped at this point, but when we get into the spring and we do the general population, it's out there. It's right here on Captain Neville Drive here in Waterbury, which is right on the highway. So you can keep that in your mind, and it's available to help out if needed. Okay.
Duly noted, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for all the great work you guys are doing. Okay, folks, we're going to go to item agenda 5, NVCOG Planning Transportation LOTSID program update. Christian, please.
Good morning. Thank you. I just want to give a quick program update. You have a memo in before you, just a couple updates to the table shown. We have projects that are entering an additional project entering the construction phase, and additional projects that have moved from pre-design into design. But I then want to direct your attention to the two charts I provided you. One is statewide and one is the regional chart. I think what we've been seeing all along in this program is an impending hockey stick where that spending catches up to our allocation. And we never get there. And this is just, it's an important indicator as we argue for the value and demand of this project. Spending is one indicator that we think tells a strong story about how projects are getting out into the communities and being built. So I just want to underline consistently, we've seen experienced design firms who are familiar with the state design process are able to deliver on time and keeps their schedules. There is an NVCOG list of pre-selected consultants that were selected through a qualifications-based process. We actually, as a region, are a little ahead of some of the other regions in the state in spending up to our full allocation, but just want to bring this before you.
Okay.
I can keep going. This is just a quick FYI. This is similar to the highway safety standards that this board has approved in the past. No action is required on these transit safety performance measures, but I wanted to let you know that they exist. CT Transit has adopted measures for the CT Transit Waterbury division. This is an annual process, so if there are any concerns or questions about the safety of the riders or the operators on the bus service, this would be a place where we could discuss with CT Transit.
Okay, Christian, thank you so much. Anybody have any questions for Christian? Okay, get you off the hook easy today, buddy.
Thank you.
Item agenda 6, environmental planning, Resilient Connecticut CT update. Mr. David Murphy from Mylone and McBroom.
Mayor, I'm just going to introduce for a moment. This is David Murphy. A lot of you know him from Mylone and McBroom, and he's going to be talking about ResilentCT. It's a program administered through the Yukon CRCOG, Connecticut Institute for Resilience and Climate Change, and this particular program is funded through the Federal Housing and Urban Development Grant, and it's studying coastal and riverine flood zones in Fairfield and New Haven County. If we could have David share his screen, that would be great, and we'll give it to David.
Okay, thank you, Joanna. Screen is shared, should be visible, and hopefully my volume is adequate for everybody. Thanks for having me. I will be brief. I know that I met with all of you about a month ago for a quick verbal introduction to this project. We did not have slides at the time because we were coming on to the agenda a little bit late in the game. So I've got about 10 slides I'll go through today. I know a couple of you, for example, Sheila, I know you're in the meeting. You've seen these slides at the TTAC or RPC. So I apologize if you've seen them already, but I think many of you have not. So
that's okay. It's worth revisiting.
Thank you. So just to center us, as Joanna said, these are federal funds from HUD. A significant portion of the funds went to Bridgeport for the Resilient Bridgeport, Connecticut. We are working on the right-hand side of this graphic. So the left is Resilient Bridgeport, the right is Resilient Connecticut. A lesser amount of the funding went to CRCOG and Yukon to administer this program, which is fostering planning in New Haven and Fairfield counties. This is the long-term vision that CRCOG has established for the program. It's about a lot of things, but it really boils down to a couple things. So it's looking at adapting structures and infrastructure to withstand flooding, protecting communities, and fostering development where we can't adapt structures to withstand flooding. So in other words, if we can't adapt an area, let's shift our investment to higher, safer ground, perhaps. The program speaks to energy, economic, and social resilience. Transit is a big part of this. CRCOG has coined a new term called resilient corridors, which focuses on linking resilient hubs. TOD, so transit-oriented development, is a big part of this. We already have some TOD areas identified in the state, and this program will hopefully capitalize on those. And then remember, it's HUD funding, so affordability, affordable housing in communities is important. We can't ignore that aspect. So I've said a lot about the vision. This is the area of focus. Federal funds are dispersed at the county level, so it's New Haven and Fairfield counties, but of course in Connecticut we work through COGs. So WestCOG, MetroCOG, NVCOG, which is the blue color, and SCROG, the green color, are the COGs that we're working with. Why have I only colored 6 of the towns in NVCOG? Well, what we're doing here is highlighting those that have the TOD potential by virtue of being along rail lines, which also happen to be along the major highways. So even though the entire NVCOG is engaged in the planning, in towns that are not colored, such as Middlebury, I know Ed's on the call, you'll have some interest in this project, but you might have a lesser level of interest than Sheila does in Ansonia. These are the plain tasks that we're going through, plain words, I mean. So assess regional opportunities, identify resilience nodes and TOD opportunities, look for projects that towns can't address alone, develop pilot projects with broad co-benefits. We're going to look at each of those more closely in a minute. I wanted to just let you know what we're doing right now. I was hoping December would be quiet. It is not. We are taking this, this map that you see on your screen with all these colors, which is CRCOG's climate vulnerability assessment. And we are kind of recasting that. Sorry, the map is the coastal index, and we're recasting that as a climate index. So we're taking what CRCOG did along the shoreline towns and moving it inland, looking at flood, wind, and heat-related risks, not just coastal flooding. Remember, this is a project that is for the whole county, the 2 counties, so it's not just a coastal project, although it may seem like it is sometimes. And this graphic just shows how we're kind of, we're going to take that grid that you see with all those green and red colors showing risks to flooding, and we're going to move it inland and shift it to be from flooding to flooding, wind, and heat as well. So that's going on right now. We'll update you, in further months, maybe January, February, where that's headed. We're also looking at these zones of shared risk, which is a complicated way of saying an area of people or buildings that share a risk. Here's a graphic in the lower left that we received from CRCOG that they worked on last year for New Haven. And we're kind of looking at their work and maybe possibly recasting it a little bit into more functional areas that kind of can be used for planning a little bit differently than just drawing lines around flood zones. And we're also going to be incorporating, as I mentioned, heat and wind risks. So that's all going on. We're looking at the hazard mitigation plans, which we're working on the update for NVCOG anyway, so we have fast access to that. Your regional plans of conservation development that came from the prior 3 COGs that you've taken from for your current 19 town makeup, each town's POCD, and then TOD studies such as Freight Street. So the homework that I'm leaving you with, what to think about. So think about your regional infrastructure and utilities that support our development and that support our TOD development, and that we need to not fail to be resilient, right? So it doesn't make any sense to invest in a TOD area that's next to a flood zone if the water and sewer mains are about to fail, or there's a problem with Metro North. So think about those assets and how we use them. Think about the TOD areas themselves. Are any of them in areas of floods or next to flood zones? Are any of them at risk of other types of hazards? Wind, we think of as being kind of a town-wide issue, but we know that there are outages that plague certain areas. Maybe one of you has thought about a microgrid for part of your town. Think about projects that you have not been able to kind of tackle on your own, and that you could collaborate on. I just grabbed an example from the NVCOG website here. And then think about project areas that could be further developed into kind of resilience nodes or hubs. This is an example from outside the NVCOG region, and I pull it in just because it's done. So this of course was a project that Meriden implemented on its own without CRCOG's involvement, because it precedes this program. But it's a good example nonetheless, because Harbor Brook was daylighted. Now when it floods, it doesn't flood any buildings, and this is right next to the rail station, and thus it supports that TOD development next to an area that no longer has as much flood damage as it used to. So it's kind of a good example, even though it precedes Resilient Connecticut. And thinking about this slide and how that could kind of be fit into the NVCOG region, I leave you with Freight Street in Waterbury. So next to a river, it's not a 100-year flood zone. It's got a little bit of a lesser risk, but nonetheless, it's next to the river. It's next to the train station. It's a TOD development area, and it may be the kind of example that we can pick up with Resilient Connecticut and further develop the plans for. Here's the contact information, John Trusinski at CRCOG, and then you can always reach out to me. We will come back and report to the board again in future months about how the project's coming along. But in the meantime, just think about kind of the homework that I left you with. And if you have any ideas for resilience projects, let us know. And that is all that I have. Back to Joanna.
Thank you,
I don't-
David. Go ahead,
Yeah, I
Joanna.
don't have anything else. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. David, will you do me a favor? Would you email me this presentation?
Yep, I can do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's see. Kinneytown Dam update. Aaron.
Thank you, Chairman. So just a brief recap of what we discussed last month. Kinneytown Dam is a hydroelectric facility in Seymour and Ansonia. It's owned by Enel, which is a multinational corporation in Italy. The dam has a permit exemption from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC. And as a condition of that permit exemption, Enel is required to provide safe, timely, and effective fish passage at the dam. In 1999, a fish ladder was installed under the oversight of Connecticut Deep and the Fish and Wildlife Service to meet that condition. Earlier this year, Fish and Wildlife sent a letter to FERC concerning the current lack of fish passage at the ladder. It seemed that one of the powerhouses stopped functioning around 2013, causing a change of flow that's preventing the ladder from functioning as it was designed. FERC subsequently opened a docket and sent an information request to Enel asking how they plan to either reinstate or decommission the second powerhouse and how they intend to resolve the fish passage issue. On November 9th, Enel responded that they did not intend to decommission the second powerhouse, and as a remedy to the lack of fish passage, they proposed attempting to recreate flow conditions prior to 2013 when the ladder was supposedly operating as designed. Last month, you saw from Kevin Zach video evidence that he's collected over the past 5 years, showing that there are currently schools of fish below the dam that are unable to make it upstream. So since the last COG meeting, Save the Sound and the Naugatuck River Revival Group submitted a letter and evidence to the FERC docket. That evidence included Kevin's video along with observation logs and affidavits from experts supporting the fact that the fish ladder is currently not functioning and strongly indicating that it likely was never effectively passing fish, even before 2013. In their letter, Save the Sound pushed for solutions that result in effective fish passage, in following that up with comprehensive effectiveness testing of whatever solutions are implemented to prove that current standards of fish passage are met at the dam. We believe, and Save the Sound believes, that simply restoring passage to pre-2013 levels is not sufficient. Earlier this month, an op-ed was published in Hearst Papers by John Waldman, who's a fish biologist at SUNY. So the story is getting out to the public. And earlier this month, NVCOG hired Ron Shems, who's an attorney with experience working on hydroelectric facilities and dealing with FERC. And Ron will be joining us at next month's meeting. Just some next steps looking forward. NVCOG staff is going to provide a briefing to our congressional delegation staff next week, and we'll discuss assistance that we may need from them going forward. Out of that meeting, we will likely be setting up a meeting with Fish and Wildlife Service to understand how that agency plans to respond to the recent filings. We would like to set up a meeting between CEOs and the commissioner at Connecticut Deep to understand their role in the current situation and how they intend to respond going forward. Staff is currently working with Attorney Shems on a new docket filing that NVCOG will submit to the docket. And right now we're really focusing on the FERC docket and fish passage and ensuring that FERC strictly enforces the conditions of NL's permit exemption. But going forward, we'll also be working with Attorney Shems to explore other issues that may need to be addressed, including dam safety with FERC. And I'll hand it over to Rick now. I don't know, Rick, if you have anything else to add.
You did a good job, Aaron. I appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, we're, like, as Aaron said, we're going to set up next set of meetings and coordinate with the CEOs and Deep and then with FERC. Aaron and I are going to also try and set up a preliminary meeting with Matt Trumbull, who is the, I believe, the Deputy Commissioner now in charge of fisheries. And with that, Mr. Chairman, we'd be happy to answer any additional questions.
Okay, anybody out there with additional questions or comments about this Kinneytown project?
We'll, in the executive session, we'll share a document, a privileged document from the attorney that we plan to file. But Aaron basically covered it. No big secret there.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to be doing, I think, a couple of things. We're definitely going to be setting up the meeting with the deputy commissioner and the commissioner of DEEP. And, you know, I know Mayor Loretti and Mayor Dunn have met with the appropriate officials on an unrelated topic down in Washington, D.C., but we're going to be putting that meeting together as well, I think, after we meet with the CEO or the commissioner of DEEP and the deputy. So we're on it. You know, I'm really hoping that we can get some support. I know we have representatives from Rosa DeLauro's office on this call, and we believe that, I've had conversations with Congresswoman Hayes as well as Senator Murphy, who have all asked to, you know, be kept informed on where we are. I think when we end up going down to Washington is when we'll, you know, invite our federal delegation to be a part of that discussion as well. Anyone else have any comment or question? Okay, thank you. Folks, I guess, I wanted just to acknowledge, as Rick did earlier, Anne Marie Dragonis from Seymour, new first select woman. Thank you for being on the call. Looking forward to working with you.
Thank you. Look forward to working with everybody as well.
Thanks. So yeah, we'll get to know you soon enough, I'm sure. And anything you need, please call us. Any other information? Under other? Anybody want to talk about anything before we adjourn?
Mayor Bob here.
Hello, Mayor Bob.
Just want to send our congratulations to Mayor Boughton from Danbury.
Yeah, that's a big deal. So I think it'll be a good move. Mark is a very well versed elected official, and I think his knowledge and expertise will be helpful, particularly for our NVCOG.
Maybe he'll send us more money.
Yeah, we can only hope, right?
He's collecting it, not giving it out.
Well, you can't give it out unless you collect it, so.
That's true.
Okay. All right. Well, hearing nothing else, listen, we appreciate everyone's time this morning. I wish you guys all a safe and happy Christmas and New Year, and looking forward to continue this Kennytown Dam project should be our one of our highest priorities moving into the first of the year. So I'm really hopeful that we can start to make some progress in this area. Other than that, I have a motion.
Motion to adjourn, Edmond.
Okay. Okay, everybody, listen, have a great, safe holiday, as I said, and we're going to jump right into the executive committee meeting. Once again, before we part, if any of you are interested in either one of those two assignments, please email Rick right away so that we can talk about your interest in the executive committee. Okay, thanks, everybody.
All right, Mr. Chairman, there's everybody got anybody who is going to attend the executive committee meeting has to log in to the second set of credentials.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I checked. Most staffs have been advised as to what they need to do. All right, so we'll see you all on the other side who are participating in the executive board.
Take care, everybody.